evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gary Daines. I am the interim dean of the Bill and Vive Gore School of Business here at Westminster College. And I would like to thank you very much for joining us on this Mardi Gras evening. Yes, I'm very impressed with your beads. And we hope that you'll keep them on throughout the evening. No, because I'll be sitting down quickly. Okay. So I am pleased to open tonight's program. And as we begin, I'd like to remind you to silence your cell phones, please, and remind you also that tonight's event is both a lecture followed by a question period, so we would invite you to stay till the very end here. Our lecture tonight is the final lecture in this year's Weldon J. Taylor Executive Lecture Series, and this is the 29th consecutive year that we have had these lectures. The series is named after Dr. Weldon J. Taylor, the former dean of the BYU Business School, who, along with Sid Seidelman, the former dean of the Gore School of Business and current provost and vice president for academic affairs, founded this lecture series, and we remain grateful both to Dr. Taylor and to Dr. Seidelman for their ongoing support of this lecture series. The series focuses on a key goal of the college, helping students to develop global consciousness, social responsibility, and ethical awareness. Our series features distinguished speakers from across all sectors of society, be it business, government, politics, education, journalism, community service, science, and the arts. The Bill and Vive Gore School of Business is honored to partner with the Utah Council for Citizen Diplomacy in presenting this lecture series. And before we introduce tonight's speaker, given that this is the final lecture in this year's series, I'd like to invite my colleague Laura Dupuis from UCCD to join me on the stand, because we have many people that we'd like to thank this evening.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see a full house tonight. I'm just so sorry for those of you who are here a little late and don't have a seat. But there are several people we'd like to thank who allow us to put these lectures on, make them free and open to the public. First, I'd like to thank Ambassador John Price and Marcia Price for their continuing support. I'd like to thank our wonderful Utah Council for Citizen Diplomacy Board of Trustees. We can't do our work without you. And I'd like to invite each of you, both present and past, to please raise your hand so that we can thank you. Thank you so much. And finally, I'd like to thank the dedicated UCCD staff who work so tirelessly on behalf of citizen diplomacy. I'd like to thank Erica Schoenefeld, Audrey Anderson, and a special thanks to our lecture coordinator and mastermind of the communications, so you all know when to be here and what you're going to be hearing about, and that is Jennifer Hefty.
And to Laura's thanks, I'd like to add my own to Dr. Michael Bassis, the president of Westminster College, and Westminster College's Board of Trustees, both of whom have given long and distinguished support to this series. If you're a member of the Board of Trustees, would you raise your hand, please, so we can acknowledge you? I'd like to thank Dan Clayton from American Express. American Express has over many years given financial support to this lecture series. We're honored to have that support, and we're very grateful to Dan for the support that they have given. I'd like to thank Westminster College and its students who, through their tuition and fees, help make lecture series like this possible. I'd like to thank the college's Events Services Office and Brian Schuster of Action West Video, who behind the scenes make sure that all of these things take place and are captured. And I'd like to give a particular note of thanks to my friend and colleague, Jen Rainieri, who works in the Gore School of Business. She's the person that does all of the behind-the-scenes work, from making sure that there's wine at the reception to making sure that these events take place. So a round of applause to Jen Rainieri, please. And finally, a note of thanks to all of you who month after month give life to this series with your presence, your questions, and your thirst for learning. If you wouldn't mind, if you would raise your hand, please, if you've attended 2 or more of the lecture series this year. This level of ongoing support is almost unique among lecture series in higher education in the state, and it's due to folks like you that we're able to bring speakers like Steve Solomon here. So thanks to all of you for your support of the lecture series. Now I'm going to invite Laura to say a few more words about UCCD and introduce tonight's speaker.
Thank you so much. And Gary, a special note of thanks to you and to Westminster College and to President Bassis and Provost Sid Seidelman for the support that they give to UCCD. We're a proud affiliate. It's an honor to be here tonight. Many of you are UCCD members. Since 1967, our organization has been committed to the concept of citizen diplomacy, the idea that as citizens we have the right and even the responsibility to help shape U.S. foreign relations one handshake at a time. Our flagship program is the International Visitor Leadership Program, one of our country's most important and prestigious international and cultural exchange programs. Each year, we bring nearly 500 emerging leaders to Utah to meet with their professional counterparts and to meet you, the great citizens of Utah, to sit down over a meal, to talk about concepts, problems that each of us are facing in our respective countries. We believe that we are truly contributing to our nation's peace building and national security efforts. And I'd like to invite each of you, if you're not already a member, to join. So you can visit our website at Utah Diplomacy, and as an added incentive and benefit, you will be the first to hear who is going to be on the lecture series next year. So please join us. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Steve Solomon. He arrived from Washington, D.C. this morning. We were so happy the snow stopped so he could get in and land. And it's just a thrill to have someone of his stature. We were talking on the way over here, and I asked him, do you have any hobbies? And as you read his accomplishments, you'll realize he probably doesn't have much time for it. He has 3 daughters and soccer games, but when he's not doing that, he is a journalist, and his work has appeared in print. He is the author of 3 books. Not the latest one, but the one before that is called, The Confidence Game: How Unelected Central Bankers Are Governing the Changed World Economy. But most importantly, you're here tonight to hear about his latest book, Water: The Epic Struggle for Wealth, Power, and Civilization. He has written for the New York Times, Business Week, Forbes, Esquire, The Economist, has been a regular commentator on NPR's Marketplace. He appears on BBC TV, CBS, Evening News, Fox News, Al Jazeera. Goodness, I don't know that there's one that you're not, and we're so grateful. The book that he is talking about, and which will be for sale after tonight's lecture, Water, was named as one of the top 10 finalists for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Stephen Solomon.
Okay, I hope we have the, maybe I have to turn this off. Okay, well, thank you very much, all of you. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Dean, and thank all of you for coming out in the very welcome melting snow for tonight's topic, which is germane, of course, to the snow that we had yesterday. It's about an aspect of that problem that is really fast becoming one of the central challenges to all of us, and it's the growing crisis of global freshwater scarcity. Now, some of you may remember a quarter century ago when former UN Secretary Boutros Boutros-Ghali, an Egyptian from the bone-dry Middle East, famously warned that the wars of the 21st century were going to be fought over water. While thankfully most nations have so far avoided going to war over water, the pressures around the world are mounting with rising populations, growing absolute scarcity levels, and also more and more the accelerated adjustments demanded by climate change shocks. Today we're going to look a little bit behind some of the crisis headlines, and I think you're going to be a little bit surprised, if not shocked, how often you're going to find water problems playing a very key, if usually indirect role in many of them. In food shortages, energy shortages, humanitarian and health crises, environmental disasters, failing states, international terrorism even, and is fuses to many of the regional conflicts that may yet indeed trigger one of the feared water wars of Boutros Ghali. If we need any exclamation point about that today, all we need to simply do is keep in mind the headlines of the last couple of weeks and remind ourselves that the protests that have toppled the governments in Tunisia and Egypt were triggered by food price spikes in a region that imports 50% of its food, mainly due to water scarcity. Even in the relatively water-wealthy United States, we are facing growing shortages here at home. And of course, on a globalized planet, we are no longer insulated from water scarcity's feedback effects. In fact, last March, it wasn't much noticed, but Secretary of State Hillary Clinton acknowledged the rising threat of global water scarcity to the United States' national security and to our foreign policy by announcing that the water crisis was being upgraded for the very first time, by the way, to the top rank of U.S. foreign policy and national security concerns. That recognition of reality is a good start, but it's really only a tiny step towards facing up to really one of the epochal changes that we are going to face in the 21st century. And that is how to redesign our basic water infrastructures, how to reinvent our very conceptual governing frameworks and paradigms of water management to meet the demands of a dawning era of freshwater scarcity. And doing so is really imperative to navigate through the unprecedented big changes that lie ahead. And hopefully, in the best case, perhaps we can turn our incipient global crisis into an opportunity. Now, over 2 centuries ago, our founding father, Benjamin Franklin, observed, "When the well is dry, we learn the worth of water." Today, the global well is starting to go dry. Shortages and outright scarcity are becoming the norm in more and more parts of the planet. We are at the end of a long historical era of cheap and abundant fresh water, and the dawning of a new age in which clean water is not only going to be more expensive and fiercely battled over for all 4 of the vital human uses that it has had throughout history. That is for economics, for food and industry, for energy production, for transportation, and of course for drinking and sanitation. The outcomes will reshape the fate of nations, including America's, and the course of civilization. To put it sort of vividly and in stark terms, fresh water is overtaking oil as human society's scarcest critical natural resource. And if you think about just the way oil transformed much of the history of the 20th century, freshwater scarcity is starting to similarly shape the national security, the geopolitics, the economics, the environment, and the daily living conditions of the 21st century. What is happening in a nutshell is that under the duress of the voracious demand of modern society that is globally using water at twice the rate of our very fast population growth, there is simply not enough available, sustainable supply in more and more parts of the world to meet the needs of our 6.7 billion, much less the 9 billion that we're becoming by 2050. Now, by available and sustainable, I really mean that tiny, finite fraction of 1% of the Earth's water that renews itself through the natural process of evaporation and precipitation and then replenishes the rivers, lakes, and shallow groundwater that has been sufficient for all human needs throughout all human history until today. To make up for those shortages of renewable water, we are increasingly drawing down the stock of the planet's water reserves. We are pumping dry aquifers beyond their replenishment rates. We are taking waters from rivers and lakes beyond their sustainable long-term rates. In short, we are depleting many of the life-giving ecosystems for all of the human uses of water. Now, all the audiences that I speak to, even water professionals, and I know there are a few in the audience, are always amazed when I tell them the unbelievably vast quantities of water, of high-quality fresh water, that modern society needs to produce the prosperity that we all enjoy and, frankly, too often take for granted. They're always stumped when I pop quiz a question to them, how much water do you think you personally consume each day? Does anybody want to take a